Okay, just by way of background, I am Greg Peterson. I am one of the founders of the Robert H. Jackson Center. We are here at the Robert H. Jackson Center on June 7th, 2021, to talk about the Centennial of the Allegany State Park.
Presently I'm a commissioner in the park, one of 7 commissioners for the Allegany region. And background is that I also spent many years in the park, and I was at one time a director too in the park. And it's just a love of my life.
Great, well, thank you. Jay?
Jay Bailey. I'm the current regional director of the Allegany State Park region. I am responsible for the state park facilities in Allegany, Cattaraugus, and Chautauqua counties. And I have been in this current role with state parks since 2014.
Dobby?
Well, I'm Dalton Burgett, and I'm chairman of the Allegany Parks Commission, of which you indicated there's 7 of us on that park commission, and I've been there a commissioner since about 1996 to 1998. I'm not exactly sure. I was appointed by Governor Pataki. Give you an idea how far back it goes.
So, in the governance world, there is the New York State Park System. Do you have a sense of the history of how and why the state felt it was important to designate areas in New York State? You know a little bit about that back history?
So actually Niagara Falls became the first state park in the country. And so New York was always a leader in identifying public space, public green space, and protecting it for the good of the public. July 30th, 1921, the park, Allegany State Park, was officially opened, and we are celebrating the park's 100th anniversary on July 30th this year.
You mentioned July 30th, 1921, and I'll go back to you, Jay, a little bit about the, you know much about Senator Albert Fancher? He was the guy who introduced the legislation. Anything about him?
He became the first chairman of the Allegany State Park Commission, and then he also, when the State Council of Parks was founded, a short time after the park was founded, he was the vice president of the State Council of Parks.
Dobby, you were our chair of the Allegany State region, and how many regions are there in New York State?
There's 11.
11?
Yes, and ours, as far as square footage, we're the largest park in New York State, with Allegany is, with 65,000 acres. And it's the largest east of the Mississippi, and I think it's like the 3rd largest in the United States. I'm not sure of that. But we are the largest in New York State with 65,000 acres. So it's a huge place, and a lot of people go through there. I think over 1 million last year.
Over 1.5 million annually now.
Wow. And as part of the commission work, aside from hiring Jay, what else? What's your role?
Well, our role basically is to we're sort of mandate. None of us are paid. We're appointed for 7 years, and our job is to theoretically review the budget for each year, and secondly, to review and make recommendations.
You've been there a long time.
Yes.
So does being part of the natural world. Was that part of something you did growing up? Was that,
Yeah, well, I grew up in Salamanca, New York, which is just adjacent to the park. And I arrived in the Allegheny region in 1954 and rose in the ranks till I became director. I was a forester, I was an engineer, I was a park superintendent, and I was fortunate to become the director. So it's one of those, is say, if I ever was boss, I'd do this or this, and one day I'd find myself in that position. But I retired in 1990, fortunate enough to get on the commission, and as I said before, it's the love of my life, and I've enjoyed every minute of it, and seen a lot of water over the dam, and it's Allegheny region, like they said, it's 65,000 acres, and it's the third largest state park in the United States. Baxter State Park in Maine and Custer State Park in South Dakota are the only other two state. Now, we have the Forest Preserve and the Catskills and that, but you have the Adirondack Preserve. But state parks, we are the third largest in the United States.
There are 11 chairmen, and when Jay talks about scope, State Council of Parks, each chairman of each region is a member of scope, State Council of Parks. And Lucy Waletsky, who's a granddaughter of one of the Rockefellers, or daughter of one of the Rockefellers, is the chair. And she's been the chair, I'd say, about 8 to 10 to 12 years.
started in being engaged in 1954.
Yes.
And a lot has happened since then. And could you talk a little bit about the development of Quaker Lake, which was in 1964? Do you remember all of that?
Oh, yes. I happened to be in engineering then, and I was fortunate enough to be the project engineer for the park on the job. So I was there from the start, from the demolition of all the people down there that the lake went and, took their homes for the building of the lake.
This is the Kinzu area?
No, this is a deal that Mr. Batterson, who was the regional director then, and the Kinzu was going in, and they were going to put a bridge across down the lower place where the dam is now. And he convinced them in Parks to the Corps of Engineers to build the dam instead in Quaker Lake. And Quaker Lake's 300 acres. It's 3 times as big as Red House. And it's beautiful. It's absolutely beautiful. It was all the pluses. Everybody seems to have ever made the right direction for the park.
So I never, honestly, this is interesting. I never connected the two things going on, that whole Kinzu Dam development, the relocation, and ultimately there's one of the benefits perhaps to us was the creation of that, the Quaker Lake.
Yeah.
Well, master plan, and Jay, you've got to implement that master plan. So what's your take on what Hugh did?
Well, it's interesting. So Hugh worked hard on that master plan. Had a lot of public meetings, and I've even seen some video of some of those public meetings. But ultimately, that master plan didn't end up getting ratified, in its entirety.
No. They changed it after I left.
And so there was another master planning effort that took place after that time, and that master plan was adopted in 2010. And that is the plan that we're working from currently. And it's a very good plan in a lot of ways, because they were wise enough to enumerate different options to achieve a one goal. So as time has went on, even though that was, just over a decade ago, times change and priorities change and just things that someone, could never foresee occur. And what we've been able to do because of the flexibility that was built into that plan is we've been able to execute a good number of things. And maybe we didn't do what would be called the preferred alternative. Generally, there's 2 or 3 alternatives, but one of the alternatives listed, almost in every instance, has been something that was absolutely appropriate, and we went with it. And so, I'm happy to say that we have worked the plan. A friend of mine always says, plan the work and work the plan. And we've done that. And I would say that, it is certainly a document that we use almost every day to help guide our decisions and our thinking. So.
When Jay oversees the Allegany region, it includes Lake Erie State Park, and then you have Genesee Valley.
Genesee Valley Greenway. So we manage the southern 37 miles of the 90-mile Greenway. And then, as I said, State Parks just, within the last 2 months, acquired the Senator Pat McGee Trail, which runs from Salamanca to the village of Cattaraugus. And then on Chautauqua Lake, we've got Long Point State Park on Lake Chautauqua, that's its proper name, Midway State Park, Barcelona Lighthouse in Westfield, Lake Erie State Park in Brockton, and Sunset Bay State Marine Park in Irving.
And so now you have a plan, and it is flexible, it gives you discretion, but you also have to kind of coordinate that with sort of the benefits, not only environmentally, but you also got some economic benefits. I mean, you're a tourism destination, a place where you can go to the various county locations to visit, and it creates an economy unto itself. How does that factor all in?
Well, it's certainly something that I try to take very seriously for all of our parks. I view state parks as being integral to the local communities and being a strong community partner for economic development. And Allegany State Park certainly has been recognized by the local Chamber of Commerce and also by the county tourism bureau to be a powerhouse in Cattaraugus County. And I think the same is true for many of the flagship parks around the state. But if you look at everything as a whole, Parks and Trails New York recently did a study, and it showed that for every dollar that is spent on state parks, returns $9 to the economy. And that's in the form of not only jobs, but obviously, tourist spending. And I believe the estimate for that, as part of that study, was that the state park system helps generate 54,000 jobs in New York State and accounts for, I think it was like a $2.6 billion in GDP. Within that, we engage in the local community, and we try to be an asset for local businesses and for the citizenry. And then obviously, when you congregate all of these destinations, parks are destinations, you congregate them into a system across the state, they become a very powerful economic driver.
Surprised you back in 1954 probably didn't have that economic engine like it does now.
Well, in a way, yes, but it focused on hunting, fishing, and the cabins. Then they filled the cabins up every year, and they looked at Allegany then that we were kind of focused on the middle income and a little lower because the cabins. A lot of people go to Florida every year, the southern states, and that. People in Buffalo, we have a biggest percentage of the people that visit the park come from the Buffalo area. And a lot of them couldn't afford to go there. So we got quite an influx every year of what I called the middle income and a little lower because our cabins then were like $30 a week. Today they're what, 500, 700? But a different cabin.
There's big range.
These cabins weren't,
Yeah.
worth too much more than that at the time, but it gave the people a vacation every summer, and I know they enjoyed it because I watched them over the years and felt good about, picking up that, not slack, but people that couldn't go to Florida and other places. So I think it still is that way, but they've got cabins now for whatever you want to spend, They got some beautiful cabins. But
Sitting on the commission, I was very impressed when I learned that this was something that was being done, and it's grown.
It has. So essentially, it's the Connect Kids grant program, and through the Environmental Protection Fund, State Parks has made grants available to all Tier 1 schools across the state. And they are able to it's a reimbursement program. They're able to pay for busing and program fees and everything so that teachers can bring their children to state parks and historic sites across the state. And we will cover their costs that are associated with that. And again, this all speaks back to making sure that the youth are engaged with parks and with the outdoors, so that they, first of all, can enjoy the parks, because many of these children that are in these Tier 1 schools, they're in city environments. They don't get the opportunity to come out and explore nature or have an interpretive program for them are delivered to them, and so this is it has value on the day because it's a new experience for the child, but beyond that, it exposes them to what's important in life, and it really is. It's absolutely key to continue to educate future generations to value the natural world, so that there will always be an assurance that these special places will be protected for the benefit of the public. And so, that the program has been tremendously valuable. It's been very successful. Schools, certainly, it's been a boon for them, because budgets are tight everywhere. They always are. So yes, that is a wonderful program. The commission has certainly helped to promote the program and get the word out, and helped us get in touch with school districts and superintendents and things like that so that we can spread the word.
And as you're working through the strategic plan, not only got the economics, which we just talked about, but in so much focus on the environmental, the ecology, the invasive species, these, protection, when maybe I didn't have as much tuned into, what that particular plant is, why it's important, and now you have really nature interpretive trails. How has that progressed over time? Maybe, Jay, I'll let you start, and then maybe you can jump in.
Well, I can certainly give you a good perspective about what we do today. And honestly, he, I'm sure, has some great insight from the older days. But, as it stands today, Allegany State Park is the largest unfragmented forest tract in western New York. And being that it's contiguous with the National Forest, Allegany National Forest in Pennsylvania, it is a huge expanse of forest. And as such, it just has immense ecological value. Not only because of the forest cover is the water quality superior to most other areas, in western New York, certainly. But the biodiversity that is housed within the park, we have many rare, threatened and endangered species that exist in the park due to the wonderful habitat that is there. And one of the major threats to all of that is invasive species. Invasive species have certainly, they're nothing new. People have been contending with them for years, with the chestnut blight and things like that, Dutch elm disease. But today, it seems the global economy has really made that pace much more fast and furious, and we're dealing with new invasives all the time. And obviously, the danger with that is that these organisms don't have natural controls in place. There's no predators or anything that exist because they haven't evolved together, and so they very quickly and easily can supplant native species, which in turn reduces the biodiversity, and then that weakens the entire ecosystem. So we are very, very cognizant of invasive species in all of our parks, but in Allegany State Park especially, we want to protect as much as we can. So really today, we are managing against emerald ash borer, hemlock woolly adelgid, and even things that you would drive down the road and never give a second glance at, like garlic mustard, which is a simple little plant, but it turns out there is a butterfly called the West Virginia white that is very prominent in habitat, like in Allegany State Park. And the plant it has evolved with looks very similar to garlic mustard. And however, when they lay their eggs on garlic mustard, their larvae cannot adapt to it and survive. So the butterflies are flying around, and unwittingly, they think they're reproducing, but their efforts are not effective. So just simple little things we're on the lookout for all the time. And we put a great deal of effort in hiring seasonal staff that are specifically hired to combat invasive species. And we're constantly on the lookout, and we try to find dedicated funding sources to help eradicate any invasive that we detect before it can get a foothold and really cause significant damage to the ecosystem.
That's what they were doing then. Hugh, back in your time period, was that a priority at the time, or was it sort of management of, you got 65,000 acres of forest, you got, opportunities for, frankly, some revenue there, that type of thing?
Well, it surprised you, but when I arrived on the scene, forest fires from the steam engines and that, and they had a railroad that went down along the boundary of the park, and the sparks from that would cause forest fires every year in parts of the park, and we fought that. But picking up on Jay, he forgot, and I should have told him on our talk on the way up, but the gypsy moth has returned.
It sure has.
And it unbelievable. The I always said, when man interferes with nature, then it needs to be managed, and that's about what it is now. If we don't, we have to do something. There's always something that you can find that'll, go after the gypsy moth or whatever in the ash borer, but we haven't actually found anything yet that'll actually do it. I mean, the last gypsy moth infestation, I had some acreage in the park, and they Forcon from Jamestown, New York here, it would charge $11 an acre, and I remember putting balloons up in the corners of the property and coming over and spraying for gypsy moth. But now you got to contend with all the herbicides and all that on it. You got an issue with that.
As you look at that, and this is in one sense, Darby, from your world, a budgetary issue, is you've got the economic tourism, getting people there, enjoy the lake, enjoy the cabins, and then at the same time, you've got a cost factor, not only to staff that, but the cost to deal with that, the herbicides, the invasive species, and it's a tremendous balancing act, I suspect, for the commission to review budgets.
Basically, what we do on the scope is we fight for money, frankly, for
So you're a
the
lobbying
parks.
group, essentially.
Essentially, yes, we are, and that's exactly what we do. But we also are heavily involved in public and private partnerships within the state. For example, you've, I'm sure, been up to Midway, and you see the putt-putt there, the miniature golf course. That was Pete Sullivan, as you know, came up with this idea and came to us at the parks and looked at it and thought it was a great idea. And Pete raised some money. We all tried to raise money, and the state said, "You do this, and we'll match it." And we do a lot of matching. And not at this particular time, we have some new rides coming in. And we went out, Mike Lyons, who's on the commission, we went out and we knocked on doors and we raised money. And Jay, through the parks, said to us, "If you raise this money, we'll do it." And so we did. And then you'll see it in a year or two. You're going to see these new Ferris wheel and some other new rides going in there.
Great.
But there's a big public-private partnership, and we do try to raise money from the community. And and we also, we're independent in a sense, our commission, from the day-to-day operations that these guys have been involved with all their careers. And we can stand up a little bit and be their voice, and sometimes you have to be that.
Speaking of the Allegany State Park, it's having its 100th. It was originally 7,150 acres.
Yeah.
It's now expanded to 65,000 acres.
There's still in holdings.
Huh?
There's still in holdings within the 65,000
Yeah.
acres.
Do you find that, when is enough? When you talk
In
about-
holding,
Yeah.
it's private people that have within the political bounds of the park, the 65,000 acres. There's still people, mainly in Bay State, which is as you get off the expressway coming from Jamestown, and it's just as you get off the expressway, it's the valley off to the right, and there's still private people that live within the park up there.
So it's
And-
owned by the park, but they have sort of a life use or
No,
something?
the park doesn't own it.
Oh,
Because when the park first started, we talked about 7,000 acres. Well, it's grew from there up until now, probably of the 65,000 acres, 63, 64,000
It's,
is
yeah,
owned.
it's close.
We're close. There's some in Limestone, some up in Bay State, right?
Yeah.
And
There's no significant tracks left, but there are, numerous small tracks that are clustered around Limestone But beyond that, to answer your question about when is enough enough, anytime that there is a property that comes up for sale, the state, depending on our financial situation, is often a willing buyer for those parcels. And anytime a landowner that is looking to sell their property, as long as we're aware of it, we tend to reach out to them, and if they're willing to work with us through our process, which can be fairly lengthy, we'll endeavor to secure that property and one day hopefully truly build out the full 65,000 acres.
Well, while you're talking, Dobby, we'll kind of wrap this thing up in a sense that we're celebrating and commemorating the 100th anniversary of Allegany State Park. And if you had to look into a crystal ball and see what this thing might look like, say, 25 years from now, how might you envision the Allegany State Park?
Well, I hope to hell it's the same.
I think that certainly the park is going to be there for people in perpetuity. Thankfully, people that have come before us have had the foresight to protect this wonderful piece of property that people from all walks of life for 100 years now have come to enjoy, to relax, to learn. And I think that legacy is going to continue in that, the property will continue to be protected. The ecosystem may change to some degree, but that's part of the natural process. But the property will still be there. The educational opportunities will still be there. The recreational opportunities will still be there. And even if values change to some degree, at least that legacy still exists. And I think as long as future generations can continue to engage the youth and make sure that they have a place to go and that they get there to be out in the natural world in places like Allegany State Park so that they can see the value in it for themselves, then they'll continue to protect it for generations to come. And I hope that 100 years from now, if someone is doing a similar interview, that they can say the same thing of the youth ahead of them.
You are over 93 years old.
I'll be 93 in November.
Wow.
That's,
You don't look
I
it,
remember
man.
that
You
statement.
don't look it. You hide it well. So as you kind of got a broader brush than anybody here of kind of where you might see the Allegany State Park, again, say 25 years from now.
well, 30 years. I had 30-plus years in the park. And you asked me early on what it was like early on, and we discussed hunting and fishing. But at that time, there was downhill skiing was in the park. There was no snowmobiles weren't around. You had the ski jumps. You just had different things going on. We had racing on the lake with cars. We had ice skating and that. So it's changed. It's changed, but it's changed for the better. We had nature interpretation, but it was nothing compared to what it is today. I can't believe what I see up there because it was almost off to the side, and now it's really big, and that's what people want. And I see it changing more. I love the way it's changing, especially in the park with people getting out of their vehicles and that. Snowmobiles and stuff like that. There's a certain segment wants that, but I like to see the park passive is what I'm saying, passive recreation. And people seem to enjoy them, even when they're walking their dogs around a lake and like that. They're part of nature.
Well, Jay, you are it. You're the top dog here. And why don't you have the final word here as we commemorate the centenary?
Well, I would just say that, that this is a momentous event that has shaped up to be something far different than what we anticipated it to be. Even within the last few years, I would say that, we would be remiss if we didn't really acknowledge, and we've touched on it around the periphery, but if we didn't acknowledge the pandemic, the COVID-19 pandemic, it has just dramatically changed the world and the way we do business, and we had envisioned in 2021 that we would put on a soiree that was much akin to the one that they did in 1921, with a large, public luncheon, all sorts of activities and functions for people to enjoy. They recreated that for the 75th anniversary in the park. To some degree, they had an ice cream social and a barbershop quartet, and they did some dedications, and it really came into sharp focus for us last year when we were planning for this event, that we were going to have to do something unlike anyone else before us, and do a virtual celebration, and utilizing all this wonderful technology that we have today to develop content that can be hosted online for the celebration for people to enjoy, honestly, all around the world. It's going to be at their fingertips, and that'll be there for a long time to come. But also, to do this in a way that today we can literally have a leg up. If you look at it in a different light, it was almost fortuitous to do it this way because we can record this conversation. We can record, the beautiful scenery in the park, what it looks like today. We can preserve historic photos and things, and honestly, even historic films that we've converted into digital content and things like that. And then hopefully we're able to preserve this content in a way that can be accessible to the future and to posterity, and they can really get a feel for what life was like today and what life was like in Allegany State Park, and what the whole purpose was for the last 100 years. And if they can get a flavor for that 100 years from now, then we will have outdone ourselves. And so I want to thank you so much for being open to this and allowing us to come here and speak with you about the subject. And I really do hope that future generations, the people that come after us, because so many have come before us, that we measure up to at least to a degree that we would find respectable. So, thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate it.